SpartanMag.com, VCast, Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk outside, or actually in the Perlis Plaza. First time that we've been here at camp during the VCast here, SpartanMag.com, since we've been back with Vegas. Full fall camp, full blast now. Day number 3, Michigan State in shells, I think today, helmet and shoulder pads, no lower body pads. Full pads will start on Monday. Spartans get ready for August 29th against Western Michigan University to kick off the 2025 season. Today, interviews. Offensive coordinator Brian Lindgren was out there talking about the Spartans. Matt Gulbin, the new center, transferring in from Wake Forest. Omari Kelly, wide receiver, transferring in from Middle Tennessee State, former 4-star guy from Auburn, looking to really finish his career with a bang. Also, Luka Vincic, transfer from Oregon State. So three transfers today. Jonathan Smith on Tuesday. We're learning a little bit more about this team, Paul, as we go forward. Everybody's always optimistic, but the words are optimistic, but the body language, Paul, Aiden Childs, Nick Marsh, Brian Lindgren, Jonathan Smith, there's a different body language, there's a different tone, and they all say year over year a lot further ahead than they were last year, which you would expect. But there's a vibe, Paul. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And the thing about it is, since we've had a chance to know these guys, even the transfers, except for Gulbin, and we had Gulbin in the spring, but you get a chance to know these guys, so you kind of. We've talked to him before. I interviewed Brian Lindgren several times now, so I can tell when he's talking how he's like the non-verbal stuff. It's a lot stronger now. There's a lot less guesswork. You can tell Lindgren is excited about. I'll start with the offensive line, just because there's a lot more competition there. They like the guys that they brought in. You know, Matt Gulbin's a big, strong kid. He's going to move people. He's going to fit well in this offense. He's going to fit well in the Big Ten. Vincic is a guy that Brian Lindgren said is a competitor. He brings a little competitive fire to the room, and a guy like that is nice when you have competitions, because it raises the bar for everybody. And that depth, they feel like they know where they are. But in terms of Lindgren was really positive today, and I think he likes where his quarterbacks have gotten. He likes his backup quarterback. He likes the playmakers he has at wide receiver. That much is very evident. He even likes the guys that they brought in. Charles Taplin's the guy that he mentioned that he really likes as a true freshman. And, he likes the offensive line, likes the competition level. And he went through all the position groups today, but he feels like they're way ahead of where they were last year.
Exactly what he said.
And that's a big deal, because just the knowledge, not having to do as many evaluations on personnel. You kind of know what you've got. You can communicate better. The competitions get better, and you can kind of do more. You can start playing chess instead of checkers. And
his quote was, "We're so much further along than we were last year."
Yeah, a lot of smiles. A lot of smiles today too.
And that reiterates what Smith was talking about. But really driving it home, as a coordinator, he feels like he's got just a few more buttons and levers to push. Last year they had injuries on that offensive line. Everybody's going to have bumps and dings and so forth, but when they had 2 guys go down in the first 3 weeks there at the guard position, now both of those guys are back. Brocious over at left guard now, and Christian Phillips at right guard. You mentioned Vincic. He's in there, and that's one of the key competitions going on right now. Vincic said that he's mainly being at right guard right now, which tells me that he's there with Phillips. That's a competition going on right there, and a couple of capable guys that and whoever doesn't win the starting job is going to be able to have some versatility to move over to left guard and back up both positions, which I think Vincic will have more versatility right away. But you have to wait and see who deserves to win that starting job. Christian Phillips started the season last year, played pretty well in that opener against Florida Atlantic. They found out after the game that he had a season-ending injury, but he's a guy that beat out Brocious for that job last year. Then Brocious goes in there. So Phillips is a guy that's won the starting job before. Now he's there at right guard. You bring in a transfer that they worked with before at Oregon State. That's a full-fledged competition. I think they're going to get a pretty good right guard out of that, and that's to be determined as they head into the week 2 into fall camp next week and more.
One of the interesting things that Vincic said today was he was asked about the offensive line he had at Oregon State 2 years ago, when Jonathan Smith's last year at Oregon State, and they ran the ball really well, and they had a really good offensive line, a veteran offensive line. And he mentioned that he was comparing this offensive line to that one. He mentioned that offensive line got good because they kind of bought in. They knew all of Coach Mahalchik, the offensive line coach, all his rules, what worked, how to make adjustments, how to communicate, over-communicate, and those type of things. And he feels like this offensive line that they're working with right now is taking the similar steps that offensive line took the season before they had their breakout year, in that final year that Jonathan Smith was there. That's a good thing. That's a good thing to hear. And I think when you think of a second year with a coaching staff, you would hope that by now the guys that are in the program understand those rules and know how to work within them. But it also sounds like those guys feel really good about the progress that they made from spring football when those transfers, Gulbin and Vincic, and Caleb Carter and
Colin Moore, Moore, the right tackle.
Yeah, all those guys came in. They feel like they've taken steps within the program, and that's going to be interesting to me. I think the offensive line, I think they're going to be better, but like a Gulbin, who's never really played under center before, how is that going to work for him? And he strikes me as a guy that's going to make that transition pretty well.
Yeah, I like Gulbin.
He's a worker, man. He is a worker.
The series we have at SpartanMag.com going over each position group and how they compare to last year. Watching Gulbin, I went back and watched his film for Wake Forest against Duke, specifically the last game of the season. Duke had a couple really good defensive tackles. One was honorable mention, all ACC. The other one was third team. That was the one game in which Gulbin played center, so I wanted to watch this. He played mostly guard there in his honorable mention, all ACC at guard. And I thought that he looked sturdy and physical, and wasn't sure that he'd have the mobility that they like to have in the wide zone, but you know that he does, otherwise they wouldn't have brought him here. There was one play for Wake Forest when he snapped it and they ran like a delayed screen when he had to get out and go to the sideline, and you could see that he could move. When I was here at practice on Tuesday, I was watching him and some of the high-tempo things they were doing. You could see some of that lateral movement, and he said that when he was at Wake Forest, it was 99% shotgun, like you said, not as much with the quarterback under center. So with the quarterback under center snapping and moving on wide zone, he said was new when they're going through install and getting used to it in January and February. Now he feels like he's got a good handle on that. Tanner Miller was pretty good, a good leader, had some mobility. But when I watched Gulbin last year at Wake Forest, I'm like, this guy's going to be more physical than Miller was. Nothing against Tanner Miller. And Lindgren kind of spoke to that during his, without being asked about it today, talking about having the physicality, the point of attack, physicality at center. That's kind of nice. They're excited about that. So Gulbin, who is his mother, I think, was second cousin of the great George Perlis, as we speak from the Perlis Plaza right now. Gulbin's going to give them some physicality there at the center position. And Lindgren said that he's come along as a leader already, a guy that's not taken the field yet for Michigan State, just has that natural thing about him. Gulbin's going to be a plus there at the center position.
What I liked about both those transfers, what we talked to today, is they talked about being leaders in the room, but the first thing that they talked about is you got to earn it. So they're not coming in here, flapping their mouths, talking like they're going to reinvent the wheel. They earned it in practice, in the film room, and all that type of stuff, and those guys are liked by their teammates. You can kind of tell, how they interact with everybody. I did also think that going back to Gulbin, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, the wide receivers, when they talked about wide receivers today, more of the same there. Childs was talking about it on Tuesday. Jonathan Smith talked about it in Las Vegas. We heard about it in the spring that the wide receivers have really made a push. Lindgren, an interesting quote today when he said that he felt that the personnel people on staff had done a really good job of evaluating. He gave credit to them. Because these coaches, they're coaching in October, November. They can't be watching transfer portal candidates on film in November. That's up to the support staff in the background. Cole Moore and some of the people. I should mention there's several people that are watching video, and Lindgren gave a tip of the hat to those people that set them up evaluation-wise, because he said, quote, "We hit on all four of these receivers, and all of them have different skill sets." Omari Kelly was talking about the versatility, and he says it's the most versatile wide receiver room you're going to see. And this is a guy that spent a year or two at Auburn, and you've got Nick Marsh with his size, you got Evan Boyd with his size, Krishan McCray, playmaking ability from the slot, Bullard from Valdosta State. Kelly was saying he's got quickness. McCray, one of the fastest guys on the team. Omari Kelly feels he's like he's got really good hands. That's the guy that teammates and coaches were most impressed about in the spring. A complete overhaul of the wide receiver position, combined with Nick Marsh becoming a sophomore, combined with Aiden Childs becoming a second-year starter, combined with the possibility of better pass protection, maybe some balance, getting defenses off balance. All that combined, and when Lindgren smiles about the wide receivers, when Omari Kelly smiles about the wide receivers, Aiden Childs on Tuesday smiled about the wide receivers. We've not seen it yet, Paul, and it's always just talking season, but it seems like a real thing there.
Yeah, but last year at this time, one of the things that there was a concern about that was going unspoken, and we talked about, is they didn't feel like they had guys that could take the top off.
Right.
They didn't feel like they had guys that were going to just take it the distance, like a one cut and go. And when Brian Lindgren was talking today about the guys that he has, he was excited about the explosive potential of all those guys. Krishan McCray, a guy that can take a bubble screen and turn it into a touchdown. Omari Kelly, a guy that's got good hands, runs really good routes, can do a whole lot of different things. Obviously Nick Marsh, but to have Nick Marsh be the best version of himself, you got to surround him with other playmakers. They feel like they've got guys that if Nick Marsh is bracketed and defenses are skewed to stop him, that they have guys that can hurt opposing defenses, and that's something they didn't have last year.
Yeah, that's exactly the exact quote that Omari Kelly said. He says, if you want to double team somebody else can take the top off. Not only, so those are positives. And Omari Kelly did some good things at Middle Tennessee State last year. Krishan McCray was a big timer at Kent State last year. So you're getting different levels of players, excellent players, probably guys that Michigan State probably got at a discount price because a lot of this is money ball. You've got limited resources. And when the first game of the year, I'll be eager to see what that wide receiver group looks like. And Paul, I want to say, as you know, Michigan's recycling rate has fallen from 90% before COVID to 73% in recent years. Michiganders are squandering $105 million per year by not taking back their bottles and cans. That's hurting our environment, Paul. And so help the environment, help yourself. They're your beaches, your lakes, and your roads. Take them back. Take those returnables back. Make it a habit again. Take them back. A message from Shupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to the Michigan State Spartans.
One thing I want to mention, going back to what you're saying, touch on a little bit about the value in the receiving room. I thought Illinois was one of the schools that did a really nice job in the transfer portal last year, and they got some really big-time receivers, by evaluation, by personnel. And I think Michigan State did a lot of a similar type of thing this year. But the one guy that probably doesn't get mentioned enough because he plays behind Nick Marsh, but Evan Boyd. He's a guy that Nick Marsh is raving about, a guy that he feels could have a season like he had last year, a guy that maybe doesn't go as heralded because of, the notoriety that Nick Marsh has. And, he went to Central Michigan, not a huge name. We know of him because his brother played here, and he's a local kid. But Evan Boyd's a guy that has a chance to be, I think, be a really productive guy. And it'll be interesting to see.
He's a big receiver who's still going into his body.
Yeah, he is a big kid, and this weight room, the nutrition is really helping him out. But he got a lot of confidence towards the end of the year last year. It was a breakout year for him, and he's really picked up from where he left off. Not only as a breakout player at CMU, but also as a guy that came on at the end of spring football. A guy that's kind of picked up where he left off. And I've heard good things about him from summer 7-on-7s.
And something that Lindgren said about the new receivers, he likes their attitudes, he likes their team mentality. And he mentioned that they're all willing and interested and want to be good blockers.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which you don't know when you're bringing in 4 new guys from outside the program and so forth. Omari Kelly today had an interesting quote about himself, talking about that he has not always done everything that he needs to do on an everyday basis in terms of discipline and honing his craft and so forth. Like I said, former 4-star that went to Auburn, and he's looking to really finish his career with a bang. He likes the new start here at Michigan State, and playing next to Marsh. He was a good comment today. Go over there, and you can find his video here on the channel. Make sure to give us a like here and subscribe to the channel. Go to SpartanMag.com. Check out our coverage throughout the month. Throughout the season, but you can try it for $1 for a week. You can get access for a week. Check out SpartanMag.com. We love to have you as a magger over at the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now in Michigan State sports. That's where we talk about Michigan State football and basketball every day, every minute, all year. Go ahead, Paul.
Courtney Hawkins is a guy that's going to get every minute, every rep out of you. You watch him on the practice field, and he doesn't let guys take plays off. He's a guy with a good personality and a big heart. He's all about work. And for a guy like Omari Kelly, he's going to learn how to be a pro from Courtney Hawkins, and I think that's a perfect guy for him. If that's his weakness, doing that every day, bringing it strong every single minute of his football life. Courtney Hawkins is a guy to get it out of him.
Also, Lindgren reiterated what Smith said last week about Alessio Milivojevic, Michigan State's backup quarterback. Something I heard from John Boyer, Michigan State's quarterbacks coach, back in the spring, that they were feeling more and more comfortable about him being the number 2 guy. And if something happened and had to go into a game, they felt comfortable about that. Lindgren reiterated that today. Smith reiterated it on Tuesday. Of course, Childs is the guy, and that's the guy they're excited about. But Milivojevic is on schedule as a redshirt freshman, as a backup, as a number 2.
And you mentioned John Boyer because
it's hard to have a good number 2 in college football these days because those quarterbacks leave.
It really is, and the thing is, like, you've got to be the good number 2 quarterback. You've got to prepare like you're going to be a number 1 quarterback. You got to prepare like you're doing something for the immediate. And one of the things that Lindgren mentioned is John Boyer, who came over from Oregon State. But you can tell that one of the reasons why I think Brian Lindgren's so excited about this year is he kind of has a better picture of the overall offense because he has more of a chance to be a coordinator of the overall offense rather than working with a quarterback. Last year, so much of what he had to do, so much of what he had on his plate was the development of Aiden Childs, while being the play caller, while coordinating the entire offense.
And I think studying opposing defenses every single week.
Yeah, so
it's kind of hard to have as much meeting time with a quarterback as a young quarterback needs when you're doing all those things. So
yeah, and then the other thing too is like if you're a former quarterback and there's Lindgren is a former quarterback, Jonathan Smith is a former quarterback. Boyer is a guy that they trust. You can't just bring in a quarterback's coach and say, hey, everything's going to be good. You've got to be sure that the guy is giving your quarterbacks exactly what they need to be successful in your system. And I think that's where the comfort factor is with Lindgren and with Boyer is that he's worked with him, he trusts them, and so he knows that, hey, the messaging is going to be on point and it's going to be germane to what they're doing in practice and what they'll be doing on game days.
Nothing new with running backs. Lindgren said it's going to go into the scrimmages and so forth to see who emerges there with Frazier and Tullis and Tolliver, which is something I wrote today. Did a story at SpartanMag.com talking about 8 key position battles taking place right now. Running back is one of them. No movement there yet, and that's what I mentioned today in the article that posted this morning. I wouldn't expect much until you get into the scrimmages. That's everything from ball security to pass protection. All those elements are going to come into it. And that's an unproven area, not a team strength, and they're going to need someone to jump up and do some things there. Jace Clarizio, the true freshman, has added about 15 good pounds since the spring. Lindgren said that's a guy that can plant his foot, give you an explosive play. Whether all the other things are stapled together for him at this point, unsure. But he's getting reps and he's in the competition, so that was somewhat interesting today.
Yeah, we've always covered running backs over the years. To be a home run hitting running back, you've got to be able to do some things at the point of attack. You got to be able to put your foot in the ground at the line of scrimmage and do some things. I would imagine that they'll have a decent idea where Clarizio is, and it is beneficial for him that he's been here in the spring. So, Lindgren mentioned that the second half of spring was really big for him, and he kind of came on and he's kind of picked up where he left off. You mentioned Tolliver is the most physical of the bunch.
No, Tullis more physical of the bunch.
Did he say Tullis is the most physical? Okay.
Tolliver is the most experienced, of course.
Okay,
obviously.
And so
forth.
All right.
And Frazier's physical also. Tolliver's a guy that's has added about 10 pounds since the spring. Gained over 900 yards last year at Sacramento State, looking to make a step up in the Big Ten now.
I'd be interesting. I mean, I don't think there's going to be like what you would think of as a bell cow. It's possible. It's possible that one guy will emerge, but we've seen scenarios like this play out in the past, and I just don't think that's going to. It's going to be an in-season type thing, and you don't like to see that, but I think it's going to be one of those deals where those guys play their way into meaningful reps.
Yeah.
In the course of the season, because that's just kind of how these things play out. Unless there's one clear guy, and they're stonewalling, which they aren't, then it's one of those deals where either scrimmages give you an idea, or it's an in-season thing, and you don't want to see that. But I do think it can work if the run blocking operation is better overall, and it has to be this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I agree. They may not have a pure standout guy. But I compared it to Lloyd Clemens in 1999, who was a former walk-on that would plant his foot, get north and south, had some durability, had some toughness. The reason he was effective and he rushed for over 900 yards is because that offensive line was so good, and Bill Burke was a senior, the wide receivers are good, and the defense was good, and they were playing with a lead so often in those seasons. Not a guy, Clemens wasn't a guy that was going to gain 900 yards for a weak team. Is there a Lloyd Clemens in this group? That's what I wrote a few weeks ago when talking about the running back, compared it to last year, because it's not as strong as last year when you had Nate Carter and K'Ron Lynch-Adams. That's one position where Michigan State has taken a step backward, theoretically. I think that'll be the case talent-wise, but it might not be the case production-wise, because those running backs were pretty good, but they had inconsistent blocking. They were playing from behind a lot and didn't produce a lot of yardage. Those guys were better. These guys I don't think are going to be as good. Maybe Clarizio will be better in the future, and maybe Frazier will also, but right now, unproven. But potential to have a Lloyd Clemens in that group if everything else is together? That's the question going in.
You'd love to have a Lloyd Clemens or a little John Flowers or someone like that. I just we'll see. I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it.
And we're focusing on offense today because there were offensive interviews today, offensive coordinator, 2 offensive linemen, and a wide receiver. So it's offensive themes today, offensive talking points. Joe Rossi's going to speak next week. We'll get into defense a little bit more as we go. As far as Michigan State goes, as a team, we were talking about this with Jake Liskow and Kenny Jordan, and Jason Killip was here last week, talking about this just a few minutes ago about Michigan State. And this is what I'll say about Michigan State. I do think that they are going to be better than last year, which you would expect. No news there. There's a chance they're going to be markedly better. And they need to, the entire operation needs to be more buttoned up. And Lindgren touched on that today. Formation errors, 10 guys doing the right thing, 1 guy doing the wrong thing, and you have those tackles for loss on a 1st and 10 run play. Can't have that. Even if you're losing games like D'Antonio was early in his career, are they competitive losses? Are you blocking and tackling and losing to Iowa 16-14 in a battle? There's a lot of times you can see progress and losses. It's just talking season, and we haven't seen this team on the field since November. But I do think quarterback's going to be better. I do think wide receiver's going to be better. An offensive line and tight end. The defensive front seven's going to be better. No pass rush and all those things. I think Michigan State's going to be better, and I think that it's going to be I'm expecting more physicality, more maturity, good togetherness, more of a buttoned-up operation. All those things are going to be better, but it's going to be you may not see a lot of improvement in the wins and losses column. I think Michigan State, and I said this a few minutes ago, I'm expecting Michigan State to be better than last year, better than they were in 2023, better than they were in 2022, better than they were in 2020, maybe as good or better than they were in 2019, D'Antonio's last year, when they went to a bowl game, beat Wake Forest in the Pinstripe Bowl. Back then, the offenses really struggled. Maybe as good or better than they were in 2018, when the same thing, offense kind of struggled. Lewerke had some injuries, went to the Red Box Bowl out west in San Francisco, lost 14-10 or whatever it was to Oregon. This could be the second best team since 2017, but they might go 6-6 because the Big Ten is tough. But I think Michigan State's going to be in position to go to Minnesota, knock them off. But the schedule is tough because there's no breathing room. Michigan State is underdog right now as it stands in 7 games going into the season. So, I mean, like I think Jake or Kenny was talking about going to the Boston College message boards and the things that the writers are saying out there. They're counting Michigan State as a win already. We look at, as observers of Michigan State, we're like, well, you got to win your first 3. Really? Against Boston College? You lost to Boston College last year. Boston College went to a bowl game, played Nebraska tough. A lot of people, including myself, think Nebraska's going to be better this year. You're just going to mark that up as a W? Not if you're missing a field goal or 2. Not if you're turning it over here and there. But you got to win those 3. And then you're looking at a game like UCLA, got to win that one. Really? You're looking at UCLA as a game you got to win? Maryland at Ford Field, got to win that one. I guess so. Maryland's won. They've been to like 3 or 4 bowl games the last 6 years. Not as good last year. But that's 5 maybe wins. You got to find a 6th one somewhere. At Iowa, at USC, at Nebraska, at Minnesota, Michigan at home. Possible. But the key is they need to be tough, physical, buttoned-up operation and show progress, which I think they're going to this year. And whether or not that translates into wins, I'm not sure. But I'll say this, wrapping it up. Those people that are looking at Michigan State on the schedule as a W, as if it's Purdue or Northwestern, I think they're going to be surprised by that. I think Michigan State's going to have more for them than some of those teams are expecting, which gives the possibility to surprise some of those teams along the way, whether it's at Nebraska, at USC, Michigan, something like that, maybe surprising more than one.
And for those people out there that are going to be like disappointed if Michigan State finishes 6-6 and gets to a bowl game,
depends on what the 6-6 looks like.
Exactly. You know what? For the people that are going to be disappointed, the people that are just saying, "Hey, you don't want to hear this," they're not going to want to hear it no matter what they look like. But for Michigan,
welcome to the Big Ten in 2025.
But for Michigan State to get to where they want to go, to take that next step, they have to, they have to go to a bowl game, but they have to do it in the way that you're talking about. They have to be more physical at the point of attack because when you look back at the D'Antonio era, they had a couple decent record-wise seasons, but it was a slow build, and it started with the physicality. Until you can get to that point where you can play physically with the best teams in your conference, whether that's a win or a loss on a week-in and week-out basis, you can't get to the point where you can actually compete for a conference championship. You can't get to the point where you're like in Iowa, or Minnesota in some years, or Wisconsin back in the day, or Michigan State back in the day, where you can actually compete for a conference championship. To do that, you have to be able to match people.
If you compete for a conference championship, You're competing for a national championship,
Exactly.
and that's not been the bar here since 1966.
And you have to be able to win at the point of attack. You have to be able to match the physicality. You have to be able to stop the run. You have to run the football on your own terms, and you have to play smart, assignment sound football.
In this day and age, going 5-4 in the Big Ten is a lot different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. You can be the 7th best team in the Big Ten. If you're 7th best team in the Big Ten, you're probably a top 25 team. The thing has changed about what it means to have a 7-5 record. It's not going to be easy, and those that do are going to. There's going to be some good teams to go 8-4 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the perception, maybe the mindset changes as we get into more years with expanded college football playoffs. It's less about a conference championship, much like basketball, where, yeah, it's nice to win a conference championship, but you want to be a high-seeded team going in the NCAA tournament. That's kind of the big deal. So, yeah, conference championships are great, but with an expanded playoff format, I think the mindset will turn from conference to the playoff. But
and getting
for
the
right
playoff,
now, but to get to that point, you've got to be able to do what we're talking about, to be that 500 team that no one wants to play.
And that's the first step, it's a stair step in a program progression. To make the playoff, if it expands to 16 teams and the Big Ten is pushing to get 4 automatic qualifiers to be in the top 4 in the Big Ten, if you're old like me, top 4 in the Big Ten, that doesn't sound so great. Back when there was 10 teams in 1992. Now that there's 18, obviously it's tougher. But to make the top 4, if that's going to be like the Mendoza line, whether you had a good season. It used to be get to a bowl game, and I think that still needs to be the case. But people that are just looking about getting into the playoff, I understand Indiana made it last year's schedule breaks and did a great job in a 1-year turnaround for now, and I think they'll be good this year, but we'll wait and see in 3 years. Arizona State got it done, those type of things. But just look in the Big Ten. You got Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. USC is trying to break into that top 4. USC, people. Arguably one of the top 5 programs in history, trying to break into that top 4. Nebraska, the team of the 90s, trying to break into the top 5. So where does that leave Michigan State, Iowa, Wisconsin? In terms of not every year guaranteed, but natural resources and so forth. 7, 8, 9 in there. There's going to be some good teams in that middle portion. And this year, right now, Illinois is up, Indiana's up, Minnesota is solid. There's only 2 bad teams in the Big Ten right now, Northwestern and Purdue. You got 16 good ones. You're going to see records like you see in like NFL wild card battles, but I'm not sure people are going to be able to process. I'm not sure fans will be able to process that 8-4 in a given year is not a bad year. It's a really good year for a Michigan and Iowa and a Wisconsin. Wisconsin is sinking right now, so it's a different time. But as people talk about, you got to get in the playoff. If that's the new bar, that's a higher bar than what it used to be of just getting to a bowl game. So tough jobs all over the place, Paul, and good teams that are going to have mediocre records. Anything else?
No.
All right, we'll have more coverage next week, coverage throughout the week. Check it out, SpartanMag.com. We'll have a lot of, and also great conversation and analysis at the Underground Bunker message board. And basketball as we wrap up the summer Pro-Am season in Lansing and look toward basketball season and recruiting and all that stuff. SpartanMag.com, the place to go. $1. Check it out for a week. For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. I've been watching the VCast from the Pearlist Plaza in East Lansing, Michigan with the Spartans for SpartanMag.com.